Alright, welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to cover about texturing and backface culling issues and how to fix them. Right. So texturing itself is quite a tedious and troublesome process whereby you need to have a lot of patience to work around with the UV and get them to look good. Right. And backface culling is a situation whereby your your computer or your graphics is not rendering the back facing side of faces that is facing the camera. Okay, so basically you see a model and there's part and parcels of the model is missing, right? Because of the wrong normals. Right, the content itself that we're going to covering during this tutorial will be the UV editing tab, colors with materials. In the last tutorial, right, we talk about you have a color, you use different materials for different colors on different part of the model, right? And we also look into mark seams, whereby you mark out certain part of the model and you sort of unwrap them and we export them to Photoshop, put our own custom design on it, and then load it back onto the Blender, right? And the very last part will be actually to look into backface culling and how to fix them. Alright, so we'll look into all these aspects in this tutorial. So the very first one will be the UV editing tab. Okay, so it's just a tab whereby previously you used the modeling. So this time around you'll be using the UV editing tab. So by clicking on this tab, right, the left side of the screen, by default, will be the unwrapped UV of the 3D model itself. So getting to this is pretty straightforward. So in Blender, right, you have got a cube, and at the top part, right, you will have your UV editing tab. Right, so just click on that, and you will then already have your model being unwrapped. Okay, so if you have different objects and stuff, your models, you will have different sort of unwrap, so you will look differently. Okay, so the cool thing about this, right, basically, all this unwrapping, right, is representing different parts of the model. So example, if you're gonna have a dice, whereby you got like 6 different numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So each square you have a different number to represent, and that would then be reflected onto a 3D model. Okay, so that's the idea of unwrapping a 3D model onto a UV, and that's kind of like where you can edit them. Okay, so moving on, right? So in the previous assignment, we made many different colors materials and apply it to different places, right? So for if you use the unwrapping method, okay, the UV unwrapping method, you can basically have all the colors by using just one materials. Okay, so if you take a look at this diagram on the left, on the right, okay, you will see that actually I have a color palette, okay, and different color is mapped onto a cube itself, right? So to achieve this process, right, you need to create like kind of like create a material and then set it to use a specific image, uh, and then we kind of like need to place part and pieces of the UV to represent the different colors. Okay, so how to do that? Okay, we'll dive into Blender itself and we'll just play around with it. Right. So the very first thing we want to create a new material whereby we have to click on the material button. Okay. So by default we have got already a material there. And the next thing we're gonna do is instead of changing the base color, okay. So instead of changing the base color, what we want to do now is to click on this little circle. Okay, and then we want to click on the image texture. Right. So and now we can open the image that we desire. Whereby I'm gonna go to my desktop and I'm gonna use color palette 2 as a example. Okay, so when I open, okay, you can see that I already have my color palette laid out on my UV tab. Okay, but it's kind of not very well placed, right? So and you can see, right, for the cube itself, right, it's kind of in a mess. Okay, so we're gonna make each side a single color by itself. So you can go to edit mode lah. So this is already in edit mode, and select the face. Okay, so for like this one, we want to move it, let's say to make it yellow, right? So what we need to do is to select all the corners or all the vertices inside the UV editing, and then we kind of resize it. Okay, the size for this case doesn't matter because it's just a single color. Okay, so we're gonna move it to the yellow part. right? So now this surface of my cube is yellow, right? We can do the same for the others. Okay, so you can select all the vertices by clicking A, and then move them to a desired part and resize them. Okay, so to do this rescaling, make sure you click on the transform button, transform mode. Okay, so we're gonna very quickly work on the rest. Hopefully this don't take too much time. Okay, so make sure you see if you are like kind of off, then you will see like half that is not really the image itself. So just make sure whatever you want to map is properly within the area or the part that you want to map to. Okay, let's put black. Okay, the bottom as well. Let's just do pink for here. Right, okay, so we got a cube that is well mapped up, but maybe just double check this one. Okay. Right, so make sure all the seams are like tight and nice. Okay. So this is kind of how you do your unwrap. So basically, I'm only using a single material, and I can represent easily 6 different colors or more lah. Okay, depending on your color palette. Right, so this is kind of what you have to do to like at least unwrap certain part of your model. If you want to select multiple part, you can as well. So you just click on like maybe let's just say these 3 faces. Right, instead of 3 different colors, I want to make these 3 different faces into one color. After I select the faces, right click and then click on unwrap. Okay. So with this, right, just make sure the whole area is within a single color. Okay. So now I have these 3 faces on a single color. That's how you kind of like put different colors onto different selected faces. Okay. Right. So that is kind of like what you have for your uh first unwrap. So moving on. Okay. Another feature, right, is Maxine. So basically, like if let's say there's a specific way I want to cut my cube or I want to unwrap my cube, right, I can actually use Maximes. Okay. So for this example, okay, I will actually use a cylinder, okay, and do a marking of the seam. And when we unwrap, right, it will be kind of flat out. Okay. Currently, all these models are still pretty basic, so not very fancy kind of unwrapping and stuff to it. But we'll see a more complicated one in your models when you create like more parts and more different parts and stuff. Okay, so let's try Maxim. Okay, so I will gonna restart new general, don't save. Okay, so instead of a cube now, I want to have a cylinder. Right, so this is my cylinder and I want to fire up my UV editing. Right, so you can actually now select the edges. Okay, so edit mode, edge. Okay, so you can hold down alternate and double click. Okay, that will select all the whole edges. So to select the second edge, same thing, hold down alternate and shift and double click. Okay, so now we have selected the two edge, and now we want to click on the side. So basically, I want to unwrap this, and this. So kind of like 3 different parts to it. Okay, so once you are done, right click, mark seams. Okay, so this will give you a red line. Okay, so over here, right, what you can do then is to right click and do a unwrap. Okay, so that will unwrap uh, into a UV lah, based on how you cut your seams. Okay, right. So that is kind of how you do a mark seams. And okay, sometimes if the shapes is simple enough, you can do it without. Right, but if let's say you want to have different parts of your models to be unwrapped differently, then probably you want to use this method called mark seam. Okay, moving on. So now that we got a UV being unwrapped, right? So basically we gotta do some design on it using Photoshop. Okay. So basically, right, the example is kind of from the right to left. So with the thing that's unwrapped, right? Okay, now we want to export the UV. So basically, we are trying to export the thing that was being unwrapped onto a picture, and then throw it into Photoshop, give it some design, and then put it back onto the model itself. Okay, so let's go back to Blender. Now that we have got this being unwrapped, so we're gonna click on UV and gonna export UV layout. And we're just gonna put to desktop and just call it UV map. Okay, so click export. So while it's exporting, let me fire up Photoshop. So basically your UV map, right, will be something like this. Okay, what we are interested in, right, is basically just the position and stuff of all these guidelines, right? Eventually we are not gonna export this guideline. Okay, we are just gonna how to say, just use it as a guide and design something over it. Okay, right, so now Photoshop is up and running. Let's drag this onto Photoshop. Right, so this will be my guide. I'll create a new layer. Okay, I'll create a new layer and start working designing stuff over it. So for this quick demo, right, I will just quickly draw something. So maybe I'll click a brush tools, set the size a bit bigger. uh what should we draw? Okay, let's just draw some lines lah. Okay, okay, so I'm just not an artist. Okay, I'm just gonna make a quick few design and stuff. So what, I mean, polka dots barrel. Okay, I think to make this barrel kind of like not translucent and stuff. Oh man, work on the wrong layer. Okay, let me undo very quickly. Okay, so this is my guide. Okay, I'm gonna put it at the bottom. Probably let's lock it to be safe. I gotta work on my second layer. Okay, so let's do the same thing. Draw some lines, put some dots with different colors. Okay, so for the barrel top, right, top and bottom. Okay, we maybe wanna do something different. Uh, okay, so and for the bottom, let's just choose another color. Okay, so kind of something like that. Okay, so because the material is transparent, okay, uh, we're gonna give it a background as well. Okay, I will just make a new layer very quickly. Right, actually for the background, right, don't need to be too worried. For this case, right, I'll just put, nah, I don't want a yellow background. Okay, I'm just gonna make it brown. Okay, okay, so now you can see, right, we have got this background color as a brown, and all this our guideline. So when we export this texture, right, we're just gonna not include the guideline. Okay, we're gonna hide the guideline because we don't want to see all this line in our model. So then we're gonna save this as an image. Okay, you can press Ctrl Shift S, up to you. Then for PNG, save. Then we're gonna save on our desktop, call it UV map underscore 2. Okay, right, so now we got our very ugly design barrel here. Okay, we're gonna pop it back into Blender. Okay, so same thing, same step again. Click on the material button. Right, create a new material. Okay, then change the base color to texture, image texture. Then open our texture, which is on our desktop. Okay, right, so remember to change our shading. Okay, so whatever I draw, okay, is being reflected onto my 3D model now. Right, okay, but if let's say you spend more time and really put a nice wood textures or metal textures with nice labels and stuff, you can actually create something pretty nice, I guess. Okay, let's take a look. I think it's this. So let's click on the barrel texture. Okay, so if you're gonna spend some time to design this nicely, okay, you can create a barrel. Okay, for this barrel, because it's just a cylinder, don't have much details. You can have labels and stuff to indicate. Okay, so while you're finding your labels and stuff, do find higher resolution images. This is kind of a bit low, but if your game is gonna be like far and stuff, right, it kind of doesn't really matter. Okay, right. So that's kind of how you texture 3D objects in Blender. Okay, so it kind of takes a bit of time to get used, especially if your model is very complex and stuff. Right. Moving on. So the last part of it, right, is actually the backface culling and how to check for backface culling issues. Right. So basically, right, backface culling by default in Blender and Maya, right, backface culling is always switched off. So as much as this cube looks fine, okay, but if you switch on the backface culling, okay, which is kind of what your Unity and other game engines are, you will still realize that actually this cube is not that okay, right? Because you see there's a hole. Okay. So how do we switch on this option, right? It's basically on your tab below above, okay, you have this drop down. Okay, so make sure when you are doing this, you are inside the edit mode. Okay, when you're in the edit mode, you can click on the drop down, okay, the first one on the right. Okay, and look out for backface culling. Okay, you want to enable this backface culling. Okay, then you will see the problem. Okay, so by default, Blender itself doesn't really have a wrong these issues. Okay, right. So what we can do, okay, go into edit mode by pressing tab. Okay, then we will press on this drop down and we will enable backface culling option. Okay, right. So all this look nice and sweet and stuff. Okay, so if let's say I quickly do a quick one to mess this cube up. Okay, to flip the normal is Control Shift N. Right. So now the normal is being flipped and this cube looks empty. But if I look from inside out, okay, I can see the top of the inside the cube. Okay. Right. So this is kind of like, sometimes when you extrude, when you make your models, you copy things here and there, then sometimes this will happen. Right. So another way to check for this, right, is basically in your object mode. Okay. Click on this drop down overlay. Um, okay. Let's go back object mode again. Okay. Sorry. So it's in the edit mode. Okay. And then under the drop down for overlay, okay, you have these normals. Okay. So these normals will draw a line to indicate where your normals are pointing to. Okay. Move this up. Right. So basically you can see that this side of the face is pointing outwards, outwards, and outwards. Right. But for the guy that was wrong, okay, it's actually pointing downwards. Okay. You can actually see the blue line is in the wrong place. Okay, it's actually pointing downwards. Okay. See every guy is pointing outwards, but the top face is pointing downwards. Right. So which that brings us to the point of how are we gonna fix it by flipping the normal. Right. So normal is basically how to say the where the face is facing. Okay, where the surface of the cube or the face is facing. Right. So as you saw just now earlier, okay. So in the facing with a wrong direction, the normal is actually pointing inwards rather than outwards. Okay. And in the correct run, you will see that all the surface should be pointing outwards. Right. So in order to fix this problem, okay, normally, to fix this normal issue, you will just use Control Shift plus Control plus N. Okay, that will flip the normal. But sometimes you will need to take the inside or outside. So you will see this little pop up at the bottom left corner. Okay. So let's go back to the shaded mode. Click on the face and press Control Shift and N. Okay. So now you see, it's not working. Okay, you guys gotta disable this inside. Okay. So with that, okay, it will look fine. 好 so every time when your model you exported and you check in Unity, then you realize that this is not working, then you will have to do this normal flipping. Okay, right, so with this, okay, we have come to the end. Right, so good luck with the texturing. Okay, have fun, and patience is the key to create a nice texture with a nice model. Okay, so good luck, have fun.